All right, good afternoon, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. Tonight, the administration will be presenting information to keep you up to date on our strategic plan. The interpreters for tonight are Martha Romo Aguirrez and Marty Ramirez. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. The second item on our agenda is a moment of silence. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The third item on our agenda tonight is celebrations, the student of the month. Mr. Sutter.
Board members, our student of the month is running behind. So if we could come back to that later in the agenda, we'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a couple of comments while we're waiting for student of the month?
Sure.
Thank you. Board members, I've received several emails, especially the last 2 weeks regarding COVID cases going up. I just wanted to make these comments to know that these cases are going up, not only at DPS, that's a nationwide as well. There are a lot of factors, as we all know. Folks came from the holidays, and it's getting cold, especially for DPS. Our principal have the flexibility. We start seeing some of the students coming back inside. But I'm saying this to say this, that we have all our protocol in place. I just wanted to assure to our community, we have all the protocol in place since COVID started. And we even hire a lot of folks to be able just to monitor those COVID cases on our campuses. And I just want to show to our community that we are really on top of this. Even though cases are going up, I think at some point, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Lesson, will present cases. But you will see with all the measures that we're putting in place, I don't want to throw the number here. She's going to be the one really presenting this. Our cases are not really bad at DPS. So Dr. Lesson will come with that particular comment. But also, I'm really concerned when it comes to vaccinations. So the number that I received, the report that I received this week, our school-age students, we are still below 15% vaccinations in Durham. 15, those school-age students. That's not good. That's a general. Based on what I saw from 4 to 11, 17 to 18 and all that, if you look at all those numbers, they're not looking good. So if I need to bring some specific numbers, and I'll be able to email those to you, but those numbers are not looking really promising where we are. In a positive notes, I just want to finish to say this. I received an email today with a correspondence from the State Board of Education really congratulating DPS for our graduation rates. And we have some of our schools that they call them, they've joined the club of 100% graduation rates. And I have all the certifications here with me, the certificates with me. And Mr. Sadaf and I will be going to school to be able to deliver this to our school. That's with a positive note. We have about 3 or 4 of our schools that are joining those 100% graduation rates. And on top of that, the whole for all district, we are around 87%. So State Board of Education really wanted to congratulate us for this great work. So those are a few comments I really wanted to make. I know this is not Superintendent Update Week, but I just wanted to share this with you.
Thank you, Dr. Mabenga. I appreciate that. And if our student of the month is not here yet, what we'll do is we'll check at various times. Oh, okay. Student of the month is here. So
Coming in hot.
so we will go into that celebration.
We need. Board members, thank you very much. It is not our custom to do celebrations at a work session, but since the holidays are upon us and there will not be a full board meeting at the end of the month, we didn't want to wait. So without any further ado, I'd like to present Principal Keisha Futrell of Durham's Performance Learning Center to introduce the December Student of the Month.
Good evening, Dr. Mbenga, Dr. Hardy, board members. It's great to be here and members of the cabinet. I want to introduce to you a young lady who is truly a phoenix in every sense of the word. She is a hard worker who has persisted in learning the craft of barbering. She has a great attitude. She's focused. She's a natural leader. Mr. Little, her barbering teacher, said, wow. Her other barbering teacher, Mr. Jeffers, says, I concur. She's focused, ambitious, driven, and has a great attitude, according to Ms. Helm. Ms. Harbour, her math teacher, says, I only ever had to speak to her twice because she finished my class so quickly. But I called her a very independent and driven individual with positive attitude and goal-oriented mentality. Ms. Gus, her counselor, says Janiyah is highly motivated to succeed and puts her best effort into everything she does. Because of her dynamic personality, she is a natural leader who pushes her peers to be the best versions of themselves as well. In addition, Ms. Hill says ditto on everything that everybody else has said. So as her principal, I'm gonna say that Janiyah is like a little ball of fire that greets me every morning when I come into the building. She's usually the first person I see when I get there. And it's, hey, Ms. Futrell, like no matter how I'm feeling that morning when I come in. And she's a wonderful addition to the Phoenix family. Janiyah, it is a pleasure to know you and your mom and your brother and your family. I'm looking forward to your other siblings that your mom has assured me are coming to PLC. And it is a pleasure and an honor to present you this award tonight for Student of the Month for PLC and for DPS. Congratulations, sweetheart.
I'd like you to say a couple of words, please. Floor is yours.
This is new for me, obviously. I was a little bit nervous, but all y'all seem nice. So I'm fine, but thank you, everybody, you especially. And I'm proud to be here, cause yeah.
So balloons are definitely a part of the celebration, but we have a little bit more as well, if I could. And we may need a little help with the distribution process here. This is a spark pin. We present spark pins to students, adults, community members, educators who demonstrate leadership in Durham Public Schools. And as a Student of the Month, you absolutely qualify. So this spark pin is yours. I hope you will wear it with pride. We have a certificate of appreciation for you. And then our friends at Triangle E-Cycling do amazing work for Durham Public Schools in identifying technology, refurbishing it, making sure that it's powerful and built for the future, just like our students at Performance Learning Center are. So I present to you this laptop on behalf of Triangle E-Cycling. And I'm going to have to ask you to hand that to a family member so that you and your family supporters can walk the red carpet, do the traditional elbow bumps with our board members, because it's still COVID, and to accept our congratulations. Board members, that concludes our celebration for the morning. It's not the morning, it's the evening.
All right. Love celebrating the students. Congratulations again. Oh. All right. The next item on our agenda is agenda review and approval. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second before we do that. Dr. Mabenga would like to speak again.
Oh, please, board members, I just wanted to clarify the data that I presented. Vaccination rates for 5 to 11, 29%, 0.38, 29.38. Then 12 to 18, 50%. We're still not where we need to be, but I think with 12 to 18, that's okay. But 5 to 11, we still have a long way to go. So I just wanted to clarify that data.
Thank you. Thank you.
Full vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. When you initially, I saw some eyebrows raise up, and so I appreciate that clarification. That's very important. We have a long way to go, but I trust our parents will make the right decision for our students and their peers. Okay, next item on the agenda is agenda review and approval. Before we just to add on to the agenda review and approval, there was an item on the agenda for the naming of elementary school F. It has been pulled and moved to January for more time for consideration. On the agendas that I think are outside and that we have and that are online, it is no longer on, but I will note that it was on previously. So I just wanted to make that note. There's no need to vote on that. We'll have comments, of course, but are there any additions or subtractions to the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the board work session minutes for November 4th, 2021.
Move that we approve the work session minutes from November 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the board work session minutes for November 4th, 2021. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda, that's number 6. It is general public comment. We have 1 in-person comment and 2 submitted comments. I will allot 3 minutes for each of the 3. The first in-person comment is Millicent Rogers. Saw her in the hallway. Here she comes. All right. Before you get started, a little out of practice of this. All right, just before you get started, I have to read a public comment. All right. Quick review of the rules. First, please state your name. If you're speaking for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specific time, 3 minutes. Tonight it'll be 3 minutes as well. When the yellow light comes on, you have about a minute left. So start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, the safety of students, or the operation of our school system. Finally, board members will listen carefully and consider comments, but we do not engage in discussion with speakers. Our first speaker is Millicent Rogers.
Thank you all. I just came to say thank you to the staff and administration and the Board of Education for hosting listening sessions around the student assignment plan for Lions Farm, the new elementary school. I really appreciate the ability for one to be held virtually and one to be held after hours in person for people who wanted to attend in person, and for language accommodations to be made. I know the community is excited and looking forward to engaging in such conversations on redistricting and on the magnet changes. And I hope that everybody is as open and willing to have those same kinds of conversations virtually and in the evening when working parents can make it. So just thank you so much for taking the time to do that. Okay,
All right.
have a good night.
Thank you. And before we get to the online comments, I understand there is another speaker outside, and we will ask the speaker to come in. All right.
Good evening, school board. My name is Antonio Jones, and I'm the chair of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. And I'm here to talk about agenda item elementary school F that was pulled off, but since I'm here, I'll say it anyway, right? And I want to read just a portion of a letter that we did send to the board members, and I'm writing on behalf of the membership of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People regarding a naming of elementary school F. Please be advised that the general body of Durham Committee unanimously supports the naming of elementary school F for Ms. Betty Massenberg and respectfully requests that the school be named in her honor. Ms. Betty Massenberg is the first female African-American principal in the Durham Public Schools. Ms. Massenberg was not only known for educational in the educational community, but the religious, social, and secular community, as well as a very passionate advocate for strong families and strong communities. Thus, as a well-known educator, she was revered and respected by the entire Durham community. It is appropriate to honor her legacy with naming of this school. And I'll stop there. So we do have a descendant, direct descendant of Ms. Massenberg right here, which is her oldest daughter. So in Durham, we value everyone. We especially value people who have contributed a lot to this community. So in my remaining minute and 45 seconds, a few years from now, people may be in front of this board asking to name a school after Bettina Umstead. A few years from now, people may be asking to name a school after Javon Lewis. A few years from now, people may be asking to name a school after Natalie Byer. A few years from now, people may be asking to name a school after Matthew Sears. Y'all catch where I'm going? A few years from now, the community may be asking to name a school after Frederick Raven III. A few years from now, the community may be asking to name a school after the first Latina to sit in the seat, was Alexandria Valladares. So as you can contemplate for one more month and continue to do your research, just keep in mind that we value naming of buildings, and particularly naming of buildings for people who have done and made tremendous strides in this community. And I thank you for your time. Thank you. Everything you want to say? Thank you, school board.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the board. I am Glendola Massenberg Beasley. I thank you for the opportunity to hear from the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People tonight. I want to say publicly thank you to the community and to the committee for the support that they have shown for Mrs. Betty Massenberg and the naming of the school. And so with that being said, thank you, and I ask for your support.
All right, thank you. Now to our online comments.
Thank you, board members. We have 2 online public comments today. The first is from Aaron Burnett, zip code 27713. Please standardize outdoor lunch across the district. After months of successful outdoor lunch, our school has reversed plans and is now mostly indoors for lunch, even mixing classes in the cafeteria every other week, which is very concerning. The science clearly supports eating lunch outdoors as a way to reduce in-school spread. Many local schools are managing outdoor lunch every day unless raining or below freezing, and this should be the standard at all DPS schools, not just up to the whim of the principal. And the second comment is from Paige McCullough, sending on behalf of Vanessa Barnett Loro of Thetford Road. Dear Board of Education members and Dr. Mabenga, it would be very helpful if the administration would report at each regular board meeting and post prominently to the website the following COVID statistics that are of great community interest. Number and percent of fully vaccinated staff broken in categories such as classified, certified, etc. Percentage of children vaccinated. number of nurses and other health personnel by school and plans to fill in the gaps, percentage of students participating in the current surveillance testing process on average per week broken down by school, percentage of staff participating in the current surveillance testing process on average per week broken down by school, and number of vaccinated and vetted volunteers that are serving our schools and plans for further recruitment. It would also be helpful to learn about plans for a test to stay program for students and staff, noting specifically when this could be implemented. Thank you for your work to keep our students and staff as safe as possible. That concludes the online public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Sutter. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent items. On today's consent agenda, we have 5 items: the revised calendar for 2021, 2022, policy 4150, school assignment, second reading, which is C, is going to be Ignite Online Academy furniture and audiovisual equipment purchase from Progressive Business Solutions. D is request for approval to negotiate professional program project management services. And then E is Lakeview School rooftop unit replacement contract with Comfort Mechanical.
I move approval of the consent items.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the consent items. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is,
Wait, I'm sorry.
yes,
I never know on consent where to have this discussion. I didn't, but policy 4150 made significant changes and I want to thank all of those staff that worked on that. I wonder if we could find a way to communicate that to our families. I know we're struggling to communicate during COVID. So not the detailed policy because people aren't going to read that, but the high level notion of what we're doing. And I know that's part of the Growing Together initiative. And I know staff are going to think about that, but I think it's really important to continue to kind of nudge folks if we can. Thank you.
all right. All right, it's been noted. Number 8 on our agenda is the mask mandate vote.
I move that we continue our mask mandate for the next month.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we continue the mask mandate in Durham Public Schools. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is operational services. Dr. Monk.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. This item we are bringing back before you again. We discussed it earlier in the month, which is the Lions Farm attendance boundary. I'm joined with Mr. Matthew Palmer. I think he's coming in. Yep, there he is. And so Mr. Palmer is going to share a couple of slides with you, and at the end, we'll be looking forward to the discussion and the impending vote. Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Dr. Monk, and good evening once again, board members. If you would, take us to the next slide, please. So this evening, our school planning team is going to give you a brief overview of the updates from the recommendation that we brought forth at our last meeting. You'll remember that one of our opportunities here is to seek to not only maximize our operational efficiency, but also improve our diversity at a school level. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Philip Day to join us to walk us through some small adjustments that strive towards that objective. Mr. Day?
So much, Mr. Palmer. Board members, Dr. Baker, thank you so much. How is everybody doing, by the way?
Doing well.
Good.
Doing well.
Awesome. All right, so if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is the initial scenario for the boundary lines for Lions Farm. As you can see, there's some highlights. We have an enrollment of 500 K through 5 students, a cohort of 26 pre-K and 20 EC students. And this maximized diversity from this boundary line. Next slide, please. This is the updated boundary line. But with this one, we increase the number of students by 50. This also increases the per capita income and families of color. Next slide, please. So these are the recommended student assignment plans. So I'm gonna go through each one of those 4 highlights. For Creekside, if those families live if they're currently enrolled at Creekside and live in the Lions Farm boundary, those students will attend Lions Farm. For Parkwood, it's the exact same scenario. If you live in the boundaries from Lions Farm, K through 4, current, you will attend Lions Farm. Now, in 2019, we had an adjusted boundary for those students that were at Creekside. And we sent those students to Parkwood. Those students are currently 2nd through 4th graders. Those students will have the option of either staying at Parkwood or going to Lions Farm. A little caveat though, if they stay at Parkwood, transportation will not be provided. And of course, any student that currently is in a DPS magnet school or a charter or private school has the option, if they live in the boundary, to attend Lions Farm. Okay. Next slide. So we've had 2 public information sessions, one that was virtual November 30th, and one December 2nd that was in person at Jordan High School. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments today? Ms. Lewis.
Just one quick question. Thank you for the breakdown. For the Parkwood 2019 that suggested, these are students that were at Creekside that moved to Parkwood. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then did they know that there were not possibly transportation if they had this option, or is the transportation part new?
That was the discussion at that time, was that we would be working with the board. There's about 30 total students that were migrated over from Creekside to Parkwood. Would have been 2 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Byer?
So I appreciate the work on this, and I had the pleasure of attending both the virtual and the in-person information sessions. I thought the virtual was better attended and the in-person was a little light. And it shows the strength of actually communicating with folks with Zoom. I'm also concerned that we still haven't gotten to everyone. Do you know if through mail or backpacks, we have gotten out word to the impacted families, and how have we done on communicating? Like, did people get a piece of paper that let them know that this change was coming and affecting them personally?
So I will defer to Mr. Suttereth and Ms. Cooper with regards to dissemination of our flyers at the school level. My understanding that that has occurred. I would also add that the total attendance numbers, just to refresh the board's mind, we had 87 participants at the virtual session. And I believe we had 4 families attend in the in-person session. So a total of over 90 participants with regards to the 2 sessions. So there was an on-the-ground outreach effort at the school level with principals Creamer and Rusconi, as well as in-person sessions. Mr. Suttereth or Ms. Cooper, anything else to add to that?
There was additional communication through Peach Jar. Ms. Cooper is downstairs right now, and I'm texting her about the follow-up. We also provided information through telephone calls. So the only thing that I can't tell you right now is about papers in hands. I'm texting about that right now.
I have a question, Mr. Sutherland. The robocalls that do go out from the MRC, has this information also gone out? I try to subscribe to the Spanish, but I mean, I'm just wondering in general, like, are robocalls being used for a lot of families who may not be using Peach Jar or other digital media?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And so and have you all had the chance, I don't think you had at the time we talked about it at the sessions, had a chance to project kind of racial or socioeconomic diversity of all 3 impacted schools and how that will play out with the maps that you're recommending?
Indeed. So what we've been looking at specifically, remembering again, we can't use individual child data, but we can get a good sense of the neighborhood characteristics. And as Mr. Day alluded to, With the updated adjustments that you see here, with that additional triangle, not only did we bring in 50 additional students, which is beneficial for both schools, we were able to have a contiguous boundary such that all of the eastern part of Creekside would become Lions Farm. With regards to socioeconomic and racial diversity, we saw a 4% increase. So now the Lions Farm boundary is 50% families of color, 50% Caucasian. And then at a socioeconomic level, this makes it so that it's about 17% improvement on the median household income.
Mr. Pomp, can you repeat that last number, 17% improvement?
Yes,
Is that what
ma'am,
you
that's
said?
correct.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So one of the characteristics that we're trying to be mindful of is median household income. So remember when we talk more broadly at a district level, the median household income. So that would be all earners in a household. Right? So with this adjustment, we're looking at a 17% improvement towards equity. We saw that the initial boundary, as we know in Southern Durham, we have a lot of new homes. This is more distributive of resources at a family and neighborhood level across Southern Durham.
So you're saying it's moving this 17% in a more equitable fashion than improving income?
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
saying it as an equity measure, not a, we're getting richer families. Is that-
Correct. That's
okay,
correct.
that-
Yes.
Yeah.
That's reflective of what we're looking for. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it? Okay. Any other questions? I did have a question. With the two meetings that you had, were there any general themes of concern that came from the attendees, like just in general?
Yes, indeed. Two themes, one fun and one quite intimate for families. Certainly, there was, I think, some confusion that we might be splitting families in this transition. And the intent is that siblings will stay together. That's one of the important values around having the entire K-4 cohort from Creekside and Parkwood attend. There was also a conversation with regards to the mascot of the new school. And that will be, to the credit of the future principal for Lions Farm, I think that will be a democratic process that the children will embark on.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. There are no further questions.
Sorry, I
Oh,
thought there was also concern, and maybe you wanted to clarify it, Mr. Palmer, about third graders and when we had talked about them previously, when we did the shift from Creekside to Parkwood previously. Am I right in remembering that the folks had different memory of those conversations years ago?
I'm not sure that that was, Ms. Barra, I'll need more specificity there because I don't recall that in our virtual or in-person sessions, but if there's another specific question about third graders from 2 years ago, that they would currently be fifth graders, so that would not be impacted by this. It would be, go ahead.
Yeah, the notion of letting older students stay where they are about to graduate, right? Where they've been for a while. And in previous, way back in the time machine, we've been able to kind of move the younger kids and let the fourth and fifth graders stay, or, that kind of thing. This is everybody that's there K through 4. The recommendation is Lions Farm is your new school. And it's just, I believe there were some parents that had heard that third and fourth graders that had been at the schools, Creekside and Parkwood, since kindergarten would stay and be able to continue there. That's some of the questions I saw in the chat.
I see. Well, one of the things we'd like to remind both parents and the board of is that currently of the 10 mobile classrooms that are Creekside, that's supporting the 5th grade class for safety reasons beyond. That's of grave concern. I'd also remind you that we talk about seats as the capacity of a school often, but schools also have a core capacity. One of the reference points that was brought up at both the virtual and in-person sessions was the significant traffic issues that we have at Creekside on Ephesus Church Road. And so much of our work is trying to right size Creekside, remembering that its actual capacity, it's around 600 students. It's nearly 200 students beyond that at this time. So to revisit, and we did pull I revisited our conversation from 2 years ago just to make sure we were being consistent in our messaging. We had a reference for Parkwood students that they would have that option, as Mr. Day alluded to earlier, to stay on at Parkwood so that they would only move once if they chose to. We did at that time make no reference to Creekside students, particularly those that are currently in 4th grade that would be matriculating to 5th grade. That was not part of that conversation either with community engagement nor with the board. Our understanding all along has been that one of the strategic purposes of Lions Farm is to address the severe overcrowding at Creekside. Ensuring that all K through 4th graders are going helps with some of that continuity and transition for across the campus, and also relieves the overcrowding at Creekside.
All right, thank you. And with no further questions, thank you all very much. We really appreciate that. I appreciate the transparency with the community. I love that we do that we really focus on that. Thank you. Next item on our agenda.
Well,
Oh,
can
we
get
have to
y'all-
vote on that?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll accept the motion of
So
approval.
I guess the only part of this that I have hesitancy about is the pulling transportation for 30 kids that we had kind of said, we're moving you once, we don't want to move you twice kind of thing. Do we have, I know that's staff's recommendation, but would it be feasible to consider actually not making that a barrier for folks in their decision, so that we could make sure that is equitable to all families that might not be able to transport their students?
Well, Ms. Bauer, I would address specifically on the numbers level. We don't know that number yet. That's the number of students that were moved from Creekside to Parkwood that are currently enrolled at Parkwood. So the number could be 30. I know that many families right now are making the decision whether they will attend Lions Farm or Parkwood. I would suggest, again, the proximity from the area of impact that we're discussing there, effectively between Grandale and Herndon. So really the neighborhoods that are directly across the street from Lions Farm. It's about 2 miles from there to Parkwood. We do want to be consistent and remembering that the precedent that we set forth here will carry on into our further work. And adding on legacy transportation historically has proven to be enormously complex, especially as we look to the next phases of our work together.
Yeah, I have so much appreciation for that. And also we told families that they could have that option. I don't want it to be inequitable for a family that wants to choose to stay. So, and the 30 was the max number.
That's correct.
Yeah, it seems a small thing over a short period of time that wouldn't be that complicated.
Mr. Raven.
This question may be a bit too, I probably am asking for a little bit too much specificity. I'm kind of working through my brain of, I'm a parent, I have kids that are currently going to this school, and they may possibly have to go to another school, right? For most families, that's a little bit of a struggle to get your kids to adjust to that. And it crossed my mind that sometimes we do have situations in which we have students in schools that maybe they have an IEP or 504, and transitions are a little more difficult for them. So I do agree with the plan that we have in place now, but I would like to ask that if we do have parents that really are special cases in which transitions are a little bit more difficult, if we could kind of give them a little bit of grace as well and kind of look at those situations, at least on a case-by-case basis.
Sure, Mr. Raven, and I would invite Dr. Pittman to join us, who part of this process with the student assignment plan. Dr. Pittman, would you mind sharing with the board and the public as well any considerations or applications for special circumstances?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. It's our intention to honor the recommendation as much as possible in the grade spans and the relocation to Lions Farm. What we have talked about as a team is there is our policy, our transfer policy 4132, that opens opportunities for special consideration in rare circumstances. And that is the backdrop upon which we are looking to for those extreme, unusual situations. for consideration.
That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Go ahead. That's what I'm saying.
I do think transitions are challenging. I am excited about Mr. Hopkins, who will be the principal at Lions Farm, and what he will be able to build in that school. So I think for families who have concerns, know that there's an incredible leader who will be leading that school, and I think will build a really strong and positive school community. So I understand the nervousness, but I think it's going to be a positive transition. So I hope people hear that and we can continue to message that. I know people are really connected to their school communities. And I think this will be another really wonderful community for families to be connected to.
Are we feeling ready? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Mubanga.
Thank you, Chairman Lee. Just wanted to comment about transportation. As you all know, it's been really tough and it's gonna get tougher again next year. We don't have a lot of folks with CDL. Anytime we're making decisions regarding transportation, and we just gotta keep in mind, we have to get to a point where we gotta be really strategic enough even to consider some of the distances whether or not we'll be able to be sending those buses. So as you guys are making the decision, I just really want you to know that transportation is really an issue and there's going to be an issue moving forward. So give us a little bit of grace as we are working with all this, bringing this recommendation to you. We are also really considering transportation being a burden as well for us.
I appreciate that so much, Dr. Mbenga. And I guess I would just encourage y'all to, as you work with families, consider that on a case-by-case basis, because it's an equity issue as well. I don't want folks that have the ability to have car rider families have benefits over, the general population, the bus riding students. But thank you for all the work on this, and I look forward to Lions Farm. And folks did get to meet Mr. Hopkins, which was so exciting at both sessions. So
I would move that we accept the administration's recommendation, the updated boundary recommendations be used for student placement at Lions Park Elementary.
I second.
I think it says Lions Park, so we need to update the Lions
Lions
Farm
Farm.
on this crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the item has been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use same sign. Passes unanimously. Dr. Monk.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lassane.
Good evening. I stand before you again today as we continue to try to meet our 100% goal with our vaccination mandate. We want to provide you with some quick updates. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm always going to begin with process. So I want to remind us again of our approach to implementing this vaccination mandate. I'm going to focus only on 4 areas today because we have pretty much operationalized exemption requests. We have not had an exemption request since the middle of November. And so we are holding steady there. What we're going to focus on today are changes to the process for determining the vaccination status of our current employees, our weekly testing and tracking of those employees who are unvaccinated, as well as safeguarding our school district from potential complaints, inspections, as well as legal challenge. So on the next slide, we're going to begin with talking about determining the vaccination status. We continue to review various information sources to ensure the accuracy of the records that are being provided to us for the vaccination status of each employee. We are fine-tuning our process because our unique identifier for that process is email address. So what happens when employees are coming on board? It takes them a minute to get their email address. So at the time that we're actually bringing them in, they don't have a DPS email address. So that puts us in the position of having to go back and fish for that information. So we have worked with our vendor to make sure that we can go ahead and have them enter that information as they're doing their other onboarding information. And when their DPS email becomes active, They can enter what it would be up front, and when it becomes active, it would authenticate and pull their information into the system. So we are currently working on, that is not live yet, but we are working on getting that live as soon as possible, and we were excited at that opportunity. With the next slide, this is an update of where we are with our vaccination status. So one of the things that we know we have to focus on is largely our vaccination percentage has remained consistent. There are some fluctuations. You will find that generally the bus and the classified has increased just slightly, while our license percentage has decreased slightly, but overall we're at about the same percentage. And so what I was talking about with those new employees is, as this stood on the day that I sent the presentation to you, we had 98 newly onboarded employees with whom we're still in the process of collecting information. So I do think that that is important to note. On the next slide.
Sorry, Dr. Osman, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are they reflected in the yes or no numbers at all?
They're
Those
not
98?
reflected.
Okay.
They're
thank
not
you.
reflected there. So that's why you see the 5333 versus a 5400 plus number.
So at the last, the last meeting, I talked about that no number, which in this slide is 1411. I'm going off memory here. I think there was a large chunk of that no number where we didn't know. They weren't necessarily hard no's.
Correct.
It was like we knew 500 and we didn't know a whole bunch.
Right.
Or some other number. Can you break down that 1411 for me here? What
That 1411 we know. There are no unknowns. They, their status may change or whatever, but they're counted as a hard no because they've been provided the opportunity. The reason for that is even if, say, one of them is vaccinated, they have been provided the opportunity to give us their information. They have not. And so at the time they provide that to us, their status could change.
Okay. But and I know you're going to get to this, that 1411 plus a few more are being required.
The 96, yeah,
being
98.
Required to test. But the exemption number is much, much lower, right?
Much lower.
So we've got, what is it, like 100, 150?
It's like 100, don't hold me this, it's less than 150.
Okay. So that's, let's call it 150. That's 1250, where we're basically saying it's all right, just test once a week. And I'm pointing that out to my colleagues because I think we need to have a discussion about what our expectation is around that.
And that is true, Mr. Sears. There are a number of different, so one of the things that I'm going to speak to a little bit are the other districts. There are currently 4 school districts that we are aware of in North Carolina that have a vaccination mandate. And that's Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Orange County, and Warren County schools, and then of course, DPS. However, there are some other school districts such as Guilford County schools that has what they call a testing mandate. Even the city of Durham will very clearly tell you they do not have a vaccination mandate. They have a testing mandate for those people who are unvaccinated. So what we found in this area is there are very different models that can be used. And so that is a discussion for the board to review. And so we want to provide as much information as possible for that discussion.
Sorry, I know this is not question time, but I have more about this slide. And the last time we also talked about in the no category that we were counting some folks who hadn't responded, like you said. Did we do outreach for some of those folks who aren't always on?
We
their
have done
email
outreach
to make sure that those folks have an opportunity to update their information.
Yes, we have done outreach and we're continuing to do outreach. As a matter of fact, I was working with technology even today around some of the categories of folks to send them special information for them to continue to have opportunities to provide that. Whenever they give it to us, we will take it. Anybody who has had difficulty uploading it electronically, which is our desired format, I literally have staff that is accepting them we will scan them and assign them to your profile ourselves. We are really taking an approach. We just want the information, get it to us.
And we're using some non-tech approaches for that as well.
We are.
I know the email, all of our employees who don't need to check email every day aren't. We know that's the case. And so I just want to make sure that we're approaching, whether it be at the bus depot, at child nutrition places, like going to the folks that we need to make sure we can get that information. So there's not a barrier there. And that's why my kind of question stems from.
So to that point, I have to extend a special thanks to our supervisors, because even in what we did before, our supervisors are our best tool for getting that. So when they get their list, which we're going to talk about the process of what it takes to update those lists for those supervisors, they go directly to those employees and say, is it a no? That's why I can say I'm sure more of those are no, even though some folks may still be in the process of being vaccinated. Supervisors go and ask them, get those responses. They help collect verification of vaccination and all of those things.
Ms. Valdez.
Thank you, Dr. Lassane, for these updates. I know that we have been looking at, access, for example, accommodations, if folks need to go get their vaccines, how are we working with them? I do notice that the largest group that we have on here, our classified staff, they're the largest number for no's, 753. And I do know that, speaking of access to, email, like some of our classified staff, I'm thinking about our custodians, I'm thinking about our folks that may not be in front of a computer and, being able to do these things. How are we able to continue those efforts of outreach and also provide maybe a space for meetings? I know in the past, we have had meetings over when the employee handbook came out, right? And there were concerns, especially I heard a lot from classified staff who were reaching out saying, they wanted to be able to have some sessions and information sessions about these things. Can we do some information sessions for our classified staff, to be able to help with answering questions about accommodations, what they have access to, if they need to go get a vaccine during the day, like how does that work? What kind of ways that we are incentivizing this and also supporting them in this effort.
So I would say we could reiterate that to staff, but particularly for our classified staff, I've had members from my department actually go out to areas to work with the supervisors, particularly in Dr. Monk's area. And so my team has been out in the field to help collect this data from employees. Additionally, I still have a member of my staff that people can call and say, I need help getting a vaccination. Okay, where can I go? How can I go? So we have those resources available. We are always glad to extend that information to make sure that it cascades as widely as it possibly can. But we have done those efforts and will continue to do those efforts. As a matter of fact, our next effort is centering to the area we're going to talk about in a minute, which is for testing registration. So even for testing registration, based on what we see in the discrepancies here, we'll be going out in the field to help make sure that any employee that has difficulty registering for the testing will have assistance for doing that. Okay.
I'm frustrated. I don't want to keep slowing us down, but gosh, you said, give us a month and we're going to work on this and we're going to take care of, we are not in a strong place. We've got the majority of our employees vaccinated, but we've got 27%, 26.5% that you've tracked them down and they are still not safe. Their families are not safe and we care about them. So I hope that this is going to pivot soon to what are we going to do about it, not as a board, but as the whole DPS community to get these numbers where they need to be. This is still very concerning and I want to hear plans for how we're actually incentivizing folks, raffles, prizes, making health insurance go up. I don't know what we're doing, but it's not where it needs to be for taking care of vulnerable children.
So, Ms. Smith, if you can help me and go 2 slides forward, and then I'll come back to the other. I think it just will help to talk about it in this order. So one of the things that I would like you to consider is so goes Durham, so goes DPS. And so this is the information from December the 7th of vaccination in North Carolina. So I just pulled out the top counties and highlighted where Durham County is there. So you can see that even as a county, we are currently at 68%. I further wanted to reach out to the city of Durham, being aware of their testing mandate. And I wanted to talk to them about what their percentage is. So they're essentially 10% higher than we are. They're at 84.4% of their employees who are fully vaccinated. And within the city of Durham, they have some tools that we don't have access to. So we know that they did an incentive upfront to try to encourage their folks to get vaccinated. So that is something we can visit. The one thing that we don't have an option to visit that is probably yielding the best results for them is by the way that they're insured. There is a $70 a month charge for every employee that is unvaccinated, that those who are vaccinated don't have to pay on a monthly basis. We do not have the option of doing that. For our employees that elect to use the state health plan, that is a state plan that we can't alter. And so when you think about kind of the variance in what you see with Durham, even though all of our employees do not live in Durham, just kind of where we are as a county and thinking about those things, I'm just saying that to you to provide context and to also provide context for what's going on with the city and some flexibilities that they have that we do not.
Ms. Lewis?
That was going to be one of my questions about the context of where we are as far as vaccinated and unvaccinated in the county. When you have right there, the people vaccinated at least 1 dose being at 90% for Durham County, do we have that data? Did we collect that data? How many at least have 1
Do
dose?
have the data for our employees that have 1 dose, and I wish I would have thought to compile that for here, but I can go back and pull out our employees with 1 dose and give you an idea of that pool, how many have had 1 dose. I will tell you, one of the trends that we found in some of that, which they can still go and get the 2nd dose, is we've heard from employees. So say, for instance, if someone got really sick or had an event or something after the 1st dose, for some of those time periods, it's dated. It's not in the regular 3-week period between the 1st dose and 2nd dose. So someone may have had their 1st dose, for example, in March, and they haven't gone for a 2nd dose versus someone that may have had their 1st dose the end of November, and their time just hasn't come for their 2nd dose. But I can pull that information. I have access to that if they provided the information on the 1st dose.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. Also, you mentioned that the Guilford County has a testing mandate, City of Durham has a testing mandate. Do you know if Durham County has a testing mandate or vaccine require?
I have not been able to get in contact with Durham County yet, but they're on my list to just connect and get additional information.
I definitely hear the frustration of the board colleagues here and understand that we have a vaccine mandate and that this point, those who are unvaccinated, my understanding, their option at this point is they have mandatory testing. Biweekly, is that what?
Every week.
Every week. they have
Every week,
mandatory
as well
testing.
as additional safety. They have requirements around mask wearing and where they can eat lunch and those sorts of things too.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
But we're essentially functioning like we have a testing program. I mean, that's where we are if we're acting like this.
So take, for instance, Warren County. Warren County is doing the same thing we are, and they say they have a vaccination mandate. So I think it's a matter of language and how it is presented to the folks. And so Warren County still names theirs a vaccination mandate, and that's essentially what they're doing. Chapel Hill Carborough, if you are not vaccinated, you test weekly. And so, you know, I think it's a matter of word choice.
I have one other question I was thinking, of, I'm sorry. With our universities, NCCU, Durham Tech, do you know if they have vaccine mandates also?
I have not contacted universities, but I do know that UNC Chapel Hill, as well as, of course, Duke, I believe. But I can contact universities, but I have not contacted.
I was
the
just curious. You don't have to.
UNC is just the health system. I don't think
Okay.
it's the university system.
Right.
Duke is a whole different.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I appreciate you letting us take the time here also, because I think it is germane to the data.
Yes.
And as opposed to the other parts. I'm not a public health expert, and it's easy to just throw rocks at things and throw ideas at things. So I am going to say something, but it's with the knowledge that I don't have to do the work. And I said this at your last presentation. You guys are doing the work, and it's greatly appreciated. But as you said that you went out to groups, you went out to departments, you went out to managers, and all of us on the board have gone to some of those meetings. Me most recently was the maintenance workers. I was out there maybe 6 months ago, talking to them about their working conditions and their pay. We got to do something to make sure that we know what the no's are. And if it comes back and all 1,400 say, I had access to the jab and I didn't take it, that's some data I think we can work with. But I mean, showing up to those meetings with a nurse with a shot ready to go and finding out who's going to take it that morning and who's not, that's data. Going to the 3 transportation centers with a nurse after they come back from that morning run and saying, I'm here. Okay, let me give you the shot. If they say no, that's data. You guys are doing good work by providing the Hillside vaccine event was fantastic. But I don't like the so goes Durham, so goes DPS. We can lead. And that's really what I'm looking for, colleagues, is to push our administration to lead on this in an innovative way. 583 licensed staff, those aren't all teachers, but there's a lot of teachers in there. That scares me. That scares me. So thanks for hearing me on that.
Absolutely. And we're glad to do what we need to do to address the vaccination mandate. I do think that there's some other pertinent information to at least share while the board is looking at the decisions that they would want to make. I also have to say, this is a tremendous workload. And if we're going to do that level of access, that is going to require additional personnel. There are a number of things that we've had to make choices about, trying to make the vaccination mandate a priority at the expense of communication on some other things, trying to just make sure that we do the best job that we can. And I would say that we have reached our capacity on doing that. I've talked to some colleagues in this room about processing data and different things like that, just trying to get some help. And so if there are higher level of things, I think that we have to also look at what the data says about a capacity issue to be able to track and get all of those things done would require additional assistance. So if we could go to the prior slide.
All right, listen, let me make these comments here. I just want to acknowledge the frustration of the board. I understand we came in last month with 1,400 not being vaccinated. Here we are again after a month, same number. And I also understand the work that my staff been doing, going to places to make sure that we have all this data in place. And I had a conversation this morning with Dr. Lassen, say, why these numbers not moving so much? There are some staff that's leaving us, and then we have also new employees that are coming. So it pretty much balancing out. I think we have to think outside of the box. I'm gonna use Mr. Sears' example. If we go to transportation depot, but my question to Dr. Monk and others, will the health department come with us, bring the vaccine with us? We have nurses, but we don't have vaccines. We gotta get vaccine from health departments or other partners that we have in the community. Those are some of the challenges that we are facing. We don't have the vaccine. Somebody got to be willing to say, we can come to you. So, I mean, in the cafeteria, wherever you want to be, we'll bring those vaccines. Those are conversations that I can have with our health director to see if that's possible. So we're going to do our due diligence. And as far as communication is concerned, I heard board member Valladares, we are doing everything possible to make sure that we are really communicating with those families. But if we're going to have flexibility of vaccines, we get a 50 here that we can move to other places, move around, have those access. I think it's going to be a little bit better. But we heard your frustrations, and we're going to go back and see what we can do. And I'll say this about personnel when it comes to Dr. Lesson, that concern. We're going to do everything possible. If it's going to be manpower to add, that should not be an issue if we're going to use SR funds. But I think my main concern is pretty much how flexible can we have those vaccines to be able to move around. And if our bus drivers, they're coming down there, we have 20 ready to go, we can do that as well. But I just want to promise you, I'm not saying the number's going to change, but just be assured that we are working really hard, but we're going to take all good ideas that you may have, out of box ideas to make sure that our folks are vaccinated. But the challenge is, I don't want to go to what Durham is, what's DPS. We're going to do our best, but there's still some cultural challenges there that, as you can look at numbers, we don't want to break it down by ethnicities, but folks are still struggling to get vaccinated. And as far as we are concerned, administration, we're going to do our best. But I just wanted to acknowledge your frustration.
I want to thank y'all for the work you've done. I do think it could, like, I wonder if we had a community health worker type person in your office to help. Because I think at this point, people who are not vaccinated, it is about building relationship, understanding why, and seeing if you can unpack that why to move them from a no to a yes. And that takes time, and it takes relationship building and lots of conversations. And I feel like without uncovering that why for each person, we're just kind of throwing things in the dark and hope that it works. And so I hope that we can get someone in your office who can help with that work, because I also know you all are recruiting new teachers and educators and hiring, and we have a whole, a lot of things we also need to do. So I hope we can do that. But I really do hope we have to be strategic about having an event that we make sure that folks are going to be at. So we have to understand, why are you not? Is it access? And is that something that we can provide? Or is it something else? Do you need to have a conversation with a healthcare provider to get that, to understand what kind of approach needs to take? So I hope I know it's going to take some work, can do a little bit of that understanding of the why to help move folks from a no to a yes, or maybe I'm not sure to a yes.
Oh, I appreciate that, Ms. Umstead, and I appreciate, the relationships that we need to build. I am totally would be in favor of hiring additional staff for HR or anyone that needed. Of course, it's the health department that has the shots and we don't, but we've got a winter break coming up. Our folks have been going hard and have not had time for a lot of things. There's an opportunity maybe to incentivize folks and let them know we're doing raffles, we're doing prizes, whatever. We're giving $10 a month for everybody that's vaccinated. I mean, and whatever we can do. Winter break is an opportunity, and people can go to CVS, they can go to Walgreens, they can go in their own neighborhood on their own time, but we can do better. The frustration is we can do better, and how do we do that? I hope that we can do something over winter break to really bring these numbers moving.
Okay, continue.
Thank you. So all I'm going to say, we've already talked about attrition, but I do want you to know, in the data that I've been providing you all along, this is one thing I realized when I was researching some of the employees, is there are 79 employees who are on leave of absence who are counted there are some that are on leave of absence that are vaccinated, but there are some that are not. And so I do want to make you aware that there, in some cases, may be employees, others that I have not thought of, that have a status that they're not even in our buildings currently. If we can go forward 2 slides. Our intense focus is also on testing unvaccinated employees weekly. And so if we'll go to the next slide, And so what we have here, that number was supposed to change to 1411. So I'm sorry that did not get changed on there. I just remind you again of the safety precautions that were mentioned. In addition to testing weekly, K95 or N95 mask, no indoor eating with others, and outdoor still requires adequate social distancing. Okay. I've already mentioned the registration, so in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving forward. Another slide, please. And so for tracking the weekly testing results, next slide. We continue to collaborate with our vendors to try to create the most seamless pathway for this. So now we're in this world that on top of trying to still determine status for a number of employees, now we also have to cycle around their weekly testing to verify that those who are required are actually testing. So this is another place. We just received this week our first list from MACO to vet employee registration. So we bounced that against our list of employees who were required to register. So full transparency, we aligned it to 814 current DPS employees, which is a far distance from the 1411 that are required to test weekly. And so these employees have received correspondence to register for their weekly testing by Friday. We have also added several central services sites. In addition to employees' ability to test at school sites, we have central services sites on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that are available for them. Some people ask, why not Thursday, Friday? Because we have to cycle all of that information around to supervisors to get them tested at a school site if they have not done so within that week. And so we have times spread across our central services site at the Minnie Fort Brown Staff Development Center here at Fuller, as well as Hamlin Road. Okay, so if we could go to, I would also like to add on that slide, I did pull together some information. I wanted to see what difference the vaccination mandate has made in our positive cases among staff. And that's some of what Dr. Mubinga was related to earlier. Prior to the implementation of the vaccination mandate, we had a month that we had 60 plus positive staff cases. Since the implementation of the vaccination mandate, we may have around 20 some staff cases per month. 20 out of our 5,400 plus employees is less than 1%. During the whole time of the 2021-2022 school year, we have had 134 total staff positive cases, which is 2% of our population. So I think if you look at those trends over time, even though we still have improvements to make, we are making them. And so I think that when you look at the trends, even in our community, that is extremely positive for the work that all of our employees are doing within Durham Public Schools. 134 is 134 cases too many, but it is still, when you consider it in the context of all our staff, I think that that is indeed something for us to celebrate, those differences in trends that we've seen from the beginning of the year to now. We can go to the next slide. So one of the last pieces that I would just like to highlight for you are some safeguards that need to be considered when we're looking at how we're executing this vaccination mandate. So on the next slide, you will see that the first bullet addresses our kind of following of all the federal and state actions related to vaccination mandates. So in November, we got some key information from the Court of Appeals, and you can see it outlined there. I'm not going to read it for you, that basically halted OSHA's implementation of following through with this testing mandates that came out of Biden's administration. And so there is a lot of legal challenge that we are awaiting the results of those trends to make sure that we are on par with how we are doing things. And we do not have a decision on that. And so we are anxiously following those actions and seeing how it may impact our work. Anytime we have a report, we have had very few reports of violations, but anytime we have had a report of someone expressing concern about mask wearing or whatever the case may be, we have followed up with all of those and worked with supervisors, whether it's providing documentation for an employee who has been seen not following orders or different things like that. So we do address all reported violations and continue to provide guidance in those situations. And so with that, I am glad to entertain any additional questions you have regarding our current progress. And I would just add before taking questions, we're also talking as a team about how we can improve education, because I do think that that's going to be a key piece with the core of our remaining 26% of employees. It is going to take the discussion, the relationship, the education, and all of those sorts of things, and exactly how do we go about that, and what resources can we utilize to make those connections. So on the next slide, we'll entertain any questions.
Ms. Valladares.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lassane. Really appreciate all the updates and efforts. It's very clear that we need support, and we need some community support as well. I think one of the things that I'd like to request is for these numbers in this presentation to also be at the joint county board of education and county meetings, that we can also get the county to look at these numbers and help us figure out some strategies, because we need support from the community as well. I know that there are people out there, some of our staff that are involved in efforts with Latin-19, with the African-American response to COVID at Duke, and also with we have other groups that are trying to do, War for Life, and so many other groups that are providing access to vaccines or helping with the county, helping with Duke. But we definitely need to have this agenda item added with the board and county, and hopefully, if your team can present something and be able to show these numbers to the county, and we can both, as Board of Education and county commissioners, figure out how we can make sure that we prioritize this, especially since the county is in charge of healthcare, right? And a lot of these different things, and they're supporting us, that we can work collaboratively and come up with some ideas and strategies, ways to incentivize it, ways to make it accessible, ways to provide the education as well. I know that there are workshops that they have done, and I know that there's information sessions that you all can do. So let's work together towards this. And this is also for the community out there. There's many sites that are offering vaccines, and I think that we can definitely always do a better job of sharing when and where those vaccines are available. And I know that I have had conversations, and I appreciate Mr. Sutter's efforts as well, because I know that, even across language, there have been requests for flyers to be posted in places, peach jar, for flyers to go at the school level, for it to be on bulletin boards, so that everybody, the staff, the students, the families can see where vaccination sites are happening. So at the school levels, in each of our school buildings, for there to be visibility for these opportunities to get vaccines. But then, of course, we have to continue working towards that. And also the MRC, request for the MRC to have some flyers as well for folks who want to have flyers in Spanish and all that. So thank you for these efforts, and we're gonna have to continue doing the best that we can, because this is the safety of all our students, the safety of all our families. This is our ability to continue running our schools as we, in person, doing the best that we can to avoid clusters and avoid spread. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Raven.
First, I wanted to thank you for this, because it was a lot of information, and I did my best to wait to the end because I knew no matter what was said, I was going to have another question, and it's more still coming to my mind. So the first question is, and these are not loaded, but I want to make sure that I'm asking these questions so everybody knows the answers to it. Are we hiring unvaccinated people?
Yes.
Okay. So
And I would like to clarify that, because one of the things that we started putting on postings. I know every posting I put up, I notify that DPS is currently operating under a vaccination mandate. We have to be careful the medical information we ask of employees during the pre-employment phase. And so that is a very, we can't discriminate against someone for being unvaccinated. What we can let them know is of our requirement and hold them to it upon them coming in our environment.
Thank you, because that's something that I wanted to make sure that the community knows, and the reasons that we have to go at it that way. Because that could affect how attrition can work, right? That affects how the numbers can go up and down regardless of our mandate. And if possible, are we able to put back up the slide that had the county numbers? Because I know that there's always people at home, there are people that crunch the numbers and they're gonna look at this the way some of us do. When we looked at the chart and it listed all the counties up there, I recognized that one of them was over 100%, right? And we have to, somebody's going to try to point that out and say that, the data's not right. They don't know what they're talking about. This is actually representing the information generally that we receive from the health department.
Exactly.
About people getting shots in that county, right?
Right.
So it's a comparison analysis, and usually it's a fair guesstimate that you're not going to have too many people that live in Guilford County that are getting their vaccines in Orange County, but we have to recognize that when you live in metropolitan areas, you're always going to have more people not from that county that are coming to work. And that's a lot of times where they do a lot of their errands and handle their medical stuff, especially because we're a hub for medical areas. So I just wanted to kind of point that out on that one. And the other slide that we have, if people are looking at it, is it deals with, and it shows that even though I think it's 68% in Durham are fully vaccinated, but we're showing in DPS, we're at 73%. So roughly 3 out of every 4, right? So as a board, I don't think we've kind of set our expectation on short-term, long-term, on what's our realistic expectation of the rate that we could get to, right? Because saying 100% right now is unrealistic, short-term, right? That's not a realistic goal. For me, if we can get to, we're at 3 and 4, if we could get to 5 out of 6 by the end of the school year, that would be a positive. That's around 85%, because the reality is, and I don't have to see the data to know it, because I understand the science behind the data. And a lot of people that are not getting tested and that have not gotten tested yet, it's not because they don't have access to the vaccine, right? It's been around for practically a year now. There are fears, right? And I think we do have to acknowledge it, and I've made sure that I've repeated this constantly, that we have to show people by action what we're willing to do, and we have to bring them along the way. But there's fear because every generation, every few decades, we hear something in retrospect about things that were not fair to certain communities. So I just want to recognize that. And even if we do think about making any decision on this, we have to always understand the unanticipated consequences that could come to certain communities when we're making these decisions. So I definitely just wanted to point that out, but also just again, as a board, we need to set a realistic expectation of, what are we trying to get to? Because with any SMART goal that you have, it has to be something that's attainable. It has to be realistic. So I'm just saying mine is, if we could continue doing what we're doing without burning you all out, right? To be able to get to 5 out of 6 before the end of the school year would be a great feat from my perspective. And as I believe that as time goes along and people are more conditioned and feel more comfortable with it, naturally, we're going to get more and more people to become vaccinated. Thank you.
Ms. Olmsted.
I was just sitting here thinking about how we'll probably be testing people for a while, and how your staff really needs additional staff to be able to manage this. So I just want to reiterate my support for some staff members in your office, because even managing testing for 1,400 folks is a large task. And so I just want to, again, appreciate y'all for the work, but I think we know that COVID-19 is going to go from pandemic to endemic. We don't know when that shift happens. So we'll be using some of these protocols and measures for a while. And so I really hope we can get some full-time staff support for your team really soon. Thank you.
Mr. Sears?
Thank you. And I'll add to that and remind of a statement I made at the last meeting, and that's we need to use ESSER funds to get staff at every place, just bodies. I mean, when I pick my son up for being sick, it's the assistant principal that's doing his Mako test on the way out of the door. And she should be doing something else, not swabbing a nose, but she is. I like realistic expectations, Mr. Raven. I think that is the conversation. The 1,250 that we don't have a great idea. They're not pushed into the exemption category. And they're not getting vaccinated. And we're just letting them fall into the weekly test. That's an expectation I think we could work on. So I want to kind of pull two things together. That we either have people have requested and received their exemption, or they're vaccinated, or we know that they are not going to vaccinate. We don't have that data. We're making guesses. While I know it's true in the community that different generations and different ethnicities have had struggles with public health in the past, that's a fact. We don't know what percentage that is for our population, how significant it is. It did not come up at all in the survey, but the survey was not 100% completed, right? And we don't know if people are being honest either. So my question to the board is, can we push harder, and can we actually attach a number as to how much we care? So to Natalie's point about an incentive, and I think my wife does as a county employee get a little money for being vaccinated. What if we went back? We just pushed to have $1,000 in everybody's paycheck by the end of November, right? What if we went back and tied that to getting vaccinated? What would have happened? Okay, we don't know, but let's project that forward. What kind of incentive would we consider? To me, it is worth $1,000 for every employee. What is that? 3.2 million or something that we calculated. Paul, it's actually what, 5.5 million? Because we've got, okay. How much is it? Right. 5.5 million for just $1,000. That's all I wanted to know about that, roughly that. And we've got all this ESSER money. I don't know if we're gonna be able to spend it. That kind of incentive is worth it to me. And I know, there's gonna be quoted in the paper, whatever, DPS $1,000 for vaccine. Do we care that much? What do we care? I mean, a gift card to Chili's isn't gonna cut it.
So I just want to interject, and I agree with that sentiment 100%. And I think I mentioned that maybe a few meetings ago, and our attorney let us know that we could not do that because it could not be tied to. So if that's changed, I would love to be able to do that with you.
I completely forgot that. Thank you. We may need some more clarity on that, but other organizations are doing some incentive, whether that's not okay because of ESSER funds or we get local funds, but this is that important. I mean, you spoke to the stat. We don't have to do testing if we get to 95% vaccinated. So, all right, thanks for hearing me.
Okay, I think that's it. I just had two really, really short questions. One, well, both of them are about after the vaccines are administered. So generally speaking, people have symptoms. They don't feel well after they get vaccinated. That is less in children, but it still happens, but also with adults. How is that day handled after vaccinations? Do they get a free day off? Like a lot of industry, a lot of businesses are doing. And as far as the kids, are those excused absences if they're not feeling well after either one of their vaccines or the boosters, should that come around?
And so with that, we don't really have a code that is just for, I had symptoms after I took my booster shot. So what we've tried to do is to work with supervisors to work as much with their employees as possible. A lot of it depends on the role that the employee plays and what flexibility there is for that piece. I cannot guarantee you that there is not one employee who had symptoms that did not have to use sick leave. If
Okay.
that's ultimately your question, I cannot guarantee you that.
Okay, I would just, as far as do we know, as far as children, how that works? Is it an excused absence? Or maybe that's something we can discuss later.
Dr. Spencer's coming to the mic. We have a code from DPI that we can use that is specific to that.
Yes, for the student who would have illness, any illness related to vaccine or not, it would be an excused absence, absolutely. Just in the way that it normally would with the parent
Right.
sending in a note or communicating with the school that information.
Okay. Okay, I would love for us to, if at all possible, if there's some code somewhere for our employees to, should they feel bad about, after their shot. The reason I'm asking that is because businesses do that. Corporations do that. Most of them that I know of anyway do that. And I know that this kind of stuff comes down from DPI and all that kind of thing. But if we happen to find a way to do that, I would love to give that sick day back to the teachers who had to take the sick day after giving the shot. That's all I had to ask there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm back at our definition of fully vaccinated. And when we set that, it was 2 shots. And I want to make clear to our staff that are watching and our staff, the vast majority who are vaccinated and maybe getting frustrated with their coworkers who are not. Fully vaccinated now can mean 3 shots. Booster is available to anyone 18 and over. Everyone could also consider that if you haven't done that over winter break. And to our attorney that is here, can we get clarification on incentives for vaccination? What levers do we have that we are not the only ones trying to struggle with this?
And can I just add a clarifying question? Has fully vaccinated been changed to include the 3rd shot yet from medical CDC?
No, I said
Not
our
yet.
definition has always been 2 shots. And I think that is, I think the public health guidance now is that everyone is eligible. And I want to make clear to our staff that everyone is eligible for booster, and booster is actually we need to start talking about it as your 3rd shot. It's just your 3rd shot. I mean, we may be doing this for a long time and we just need to kind of get used to it. I still want to know what we can do to help our folks.
Well, I think there had been a discussion with Ken Sue in an earlier meeting about the use of the money that had been set aside for retention bonuses and whether that could be attached to vaccinations. In that context, our advice was that those could not be linked. To the extent that you would like to consider incentives, monetary or otherwise, for people if they get vaccinated, there's not necessarily an impediment to that. You can consider that. It just can't be tied to funds that are earmarked for retention.
I would like to consider that, but I would like staff to kind of bring us your best work on what will be effective. Yeah, because this is staff retention is in our strategic plan, and we want our staff healthy.
Just a clarifying for Ms. Byers. I think the only option we have here is pretty much local funds. And what I'm hearing from you would like for us to go work with our CFO to see what can we do to incentivize those folks out of our local funds.
I would like for us to look at multiple options. There could be incentivizing folks to get vaccinated. It could also be, I don't know, if you're not vaccinated and you have to quarantine, do you have to use your own sick leave and things? Like, what are the different options? Could it be making it more inconvenient sometimes? Like, I think I want us to think about it really creatively. Again, because this is not a 6-month issue. Like, this will be something we'll have to think about for a long term. And can incentivizing it financially, will that be sustainable for us over multiple years, I'm not sure. So I just want us to think about getting really creative on those different options.
I would like to speak to quarantine again, just again, if an employee is quarantined by the public health director, there is a state benefit that pays for that quarantine period only. If it is not a directive of the public health director, they are using their own leave.
Is there any other, I don't know, thinking really creatively about that to help? That's all.
Okay. Those are all the questions?
Like, just give us a little bit time to go back and back when we come back in January, hopefully we'll be able to bring you guys some good recommendations.
And I'm super quick.
Yes, sir.
Please don't limit the look just to local funds. I mean, emergency relief. This seems like there might be other things beside retention bonuses that we could use some ESSER funding for something. Thank you.
Thank you. Well noted.
And then I hope that we'll consider this as a regular reporting topic. I appreciate y'all bringing it. I appreciate it. It's just, and the student rates as well, just to code, just keep bringing the data so that we can keep being transparent and doing as well as we can in this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to the summary of follow-up items.
Thank you. So I have three, and Dr. Hardy can help me out. Administration to provide a summary or highlights for policy 4150 for our families. Administration to reach out to the health department to see if they will allot vaccines to DPS to be administered by nurses, or if they would come to our sites to administer those vaccines, as well as to provide continuing education regarding vaccination facts and frequently asked questions. And administration look into options for incentivizing employees to become vaccinated and bring back recommendations in January.
All right. Yes. Okay. That sounds right to me. Any additional follow-up items from the board? Okay, I'll accept the motion to go into the closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
I move that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. We are now in closed session.
All right. We are back in open session. Dr. Mabinga.
So, Madam Chair, I'm here to seek your approval for the personnel report as discussed at the closed session.
Move approval of the personnel report dated December 9th, 2021.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Ms. Spire. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned. And with that, we are adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone. Go get your booster.
Take it back.